On episode 3 of The Exhausted Majority, Tim Ryan and I talk about the strikes and how Grandpa Rizzy wouldn't cross a picket line, even when shopping for a Miller High Life. We also talk about the Democrats and economic messaging, which is basically, I won't feel your pain. You need to hear Tim's take on that. Wrapping it up, we talk a little bit about innovation, AI, and medicine. Plus, how often does Tim Ryan think about the Roman Empire? Hint, he doesn't say, but he does talk about Marcus Aurelius. Here we go.
It's like back in the day, you know, and the guy's walking around with a clipboard, and like in certain cities throughout the United States, you'd have to accidentally give this guy a bag full of cash in order to get your stuff done. Jump to the front of the line.
Former congressman from Youngstown. Wonder where he got that
I've
from.
Heard the stories. I've heard the stories. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna delete that clip for sure.
Why? We speak the truth here at We the People. I was never giving anybody any cash. I never took any cash. I'm just saying, there's stories around America in lots of places, Parker, that people bribe each other. That's why we have police. That's why we have investigations.
I think my father was on the Udall for President campaign way back, and I think he was in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, and he was telling this story at a Netroots Nation conference about working, and and that sometimes some guys would come into the office and they would go into the shut the door, and then they would come out and they would have more bags than they they were just like, we see walking around cash, just walking around cash.
A little street money.
Yeah, a little street money. And, and like this is how things were going. And so he told this story at Netroots Nation, and then he was invited to go to like a fundraiser for Gary Locke when he was Commerce Secretary. And the White House bumped him off the list for that story.
No kidding.
Because he told that. Yeah. Which is funny because he was Gary Locke's political consultant and got him elected governor. And so Gary found it incredibly funny.
Wow. That's
and
hilarious.
My dad thought it was great because he never had to go to another White House, Secret Service check fundraiser ever again.
He'd have told that story years before if he didn't have known.
Absolutely. It's like, would have saved me thousands of dollars.
Oh, my God, that's hilarious. There's a funny story on, I think it was Morning Joe. They had Pat Buchanan on, and Buchanan was with Richard Nixon, like from the very beginning, just speechwriter and all this different stuff, advisor. And so they started talking about the 1960 election. And they were like, the Kennedy campaign, they were bringing sacks of cash to West Virginia and, Illinois and all the stories that we've heard. And so I think it was Scarborough says to Pat Buchanan, why didn't you guys file a federal elections complaint or something like that? And these guys stole Illinois and stole this. And Buchanan says, because we stole Kentucky. So, I mean, it's just, American history is filled with interesting stories. He said we stole Kentucky.
All right.
Incredible.
Going into the stories, big story of the week, obviously, is the strikes. The writers' strike has been going on for a long time. The UAW strike, certainly has started and is very much heating up. The writers' strike is really, kind of interesting because of the, it's been going on for a long time now, and kind of that initial big push of energy and, the picket lines are really well populated, and everybody's like, yes, absolutely, solidarity. And then it goes on for, a little bit longer, and you start having some wavering of the commitment. and we kind of see that, we saw that last week with Bill Maher and Drew Barrymore. And I don't know if you saw the kind of, Drew Barrymore video about it. She did this very long-winded, selfie style, video about deciding to go back, and she
Very
kept
emotional.
saying, very emotional. She kept saying that, no, this wasn't PR produced. She didn't ask any of her public relations people, which she should have. I thought it was a terrible. Like that's what they're there for.
Yeah, you may want to run that by them. You probably pay them a lot of money. You might as well at least get their opinion on it.
Yeah, right. And so,
Yeah.
but then they go out saying we're gonna start we're gonna start our shows again, and then they back. The pushback's pretty severe, and they just crumble. They just crumble. Then they're now thankfully they're back on the picket line. No shows starting again, but what did you think when you saw that? Like, what was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, just clearly not understanding the power of the solidarity. I think it sounds like the strike may be coming to an end here any hour, any day, because of the leverage, I think, in the solidarity that you started to see in the industry. And so in the last couple of days to say, yeah, screw it. I'm crossing the picket line. It's crazy. It's crazy. And, where we grew up in Northeast Ohio, I remember towards the end of my grandfather's life, he was Italian, and he used to love to go grocery shopping. It was like, the man turned it into an art form. And he would like, so he couldn't drive. And
what does that mean? What's grocery shopping as an art form? That was his.
You know where the sales are. You know which store has which product with the best deal, and so it was like an all day enterprise. So which used to be good. He was retired. But then he couldn't get around. And one day it was like snowing, and my grandmother wasn't. I don't think she was doing well. And he says, "Hey, can you take me grocery shopping?" And absolutely. So we spent the next 2 to 3 hours of the day going from store to store to store. And we had to go to this store to get the provolone cheese. We had to go to this store to get the pepperoni. We had to go to the Speedway gas station. Never forget this. We had to go to the Speedway gas station because at that point they were selling a 30-pack of Miller High Life for $9.99. And Johnny Rizzi was not going to miss. He was not going to miss that sale to get the champagne of beers in cans. Actually, it wasn't even in the bottles. But so I was trying to say, okay, Grandpa, it's time to it's a wrap. He said, well, we got to go one more thing. We got to go over here. And I said, well, the grocery store's right here. Let's just hit this one. And he was like, we can't. And I complained and why not? And he said, the meat cutters are on strike. We can't cross the picket line. And that was kind of the ethic where we came from. He was a steel worker. He was for 40 years. He was treasurer of his union. And I think the general, ethic, the general, approach in our area was you don't cross the picket line. And those workers are using their collective bargaining power, the basic American right to associate with whoever you want to associate with, which is why you get, you listen to guys like Tim Scott and Nikki Haley and all these people. Like, you have complete income inequality in the country. It's been going on for 30 or 40 years. You've had terrible trade deals that were negotiated by the corporations, and all the workers got screwed. And so now you got 40 years worth of this stuff, and the balance of power has been completely on the side of the corporations, the big corporations, the big banks, big pharma. And so the only way to combat that throughout the history of the country was organized labor. And that's when we were able to build the largest, biggest middle class in the history of the world. And so that's why the right wing, the Koch brothers and all these groups put so much money into trying to destroy the American labor movement, because it was that labor movement that built the middle class, wages, pensions, good health care benefits, 40-hour work week. And that rippled throughout not just the union workers, but the non-union workers. And so for a politician, I find it mind-boggling to be that much against the workers, and it's been funny to watch the Republicans try to navigate this, because it's like, are they with the workers or are they with the companies who are trying to do electric vehicles? So they're like totally caught in their own, like web that they've created, because they're trying to be the party of the working class, which everybody knows they're not. And then, but at the same time, if they go against the workers, they're going to be for the electric vehicle industry, which of course they can't be for. And I just think it's revealing this, the political dynamic. But, to watch these folks really try to use these workers as a pawn in this game, I just think it's important for all of us to get the word out. Like, this is the line. This is the plank in the platform. Right to work, bust the unions. And I tell you, I do a lot of work with building and construction trade unions, for example. These guys do good. They're skilled craftspeople. They make a good wage. They have a good retirement, and good health care benefits. Their families are secure. And because of a lot of the bills that are coming out, they're going to have a lot of work for the years to come. And they wouldn't be getting paid that much if it wasn't for their union. And so I think we got to highlight the fact that these unions are important. Maybe they don't fit every industry, but there are a lot of industries that they do represent well, and that can help us rebuild the middle class. And so to be on the other side of that, you want to cross a picket line, you want to demean the worker, we got to call bullshit on them.
What do you say to the people who are kind of on the picket lines right now for like the UAW, for like the writers, like hold strong or just keep going? Like what's...
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for us to say hang tight, but we're like what we're trying to do with We the People, with some of the videos that we've made in the past week or two. We want to try to provide some air support for them to hold the line, for us to try to shift the narrative in their favor, which I think we're helping to do that. But you do have to hold tight, and I know there are strike funds where the unions help families kind of weather the storm a little bit. With the banks still want their mortgage. The one thing about the UAW too, I want people to really realize is that I represented a factory in Northeast Ohio, the Lordstown factory, where it closed. It went through years and years of ups and downs, and then it closed. And so the workers in that factory, and so this factory was almost on the border of Pennsylvania, so eastern Ohio. They were able to leave and get jobs in other places. Some had to go to Detroit. Some had to go to Toledo. Some had to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Some went down, I think, to Tennessee. Some went to Missouri. And in most instances, the families didn't leave. Like the spouse stayed in Youngstown with the kids who were in school somewhere, and they had their friends and they had the whole thing. But the mom or the dad would have like 5 years left to work for General Motors so they could get their pension. It was a terrible decision for families to have to make. And I remember I was hitting all the picket lines when General Motors went on strike last time. And I was in Toledo, Detroit, and in Indiana. I kept running into people from back home who had moved out there. They got to they live with like 3 other workers in a small apartment. They try to get home every weekend if they can. Toledo's 3 hours, Detroit's like 4, Fort Wayne, Indiana's even further. Or every 2 weeks. I mean, they missed so much, so many games, so many birthdays, so many this and that of their kids growing up. And so a lot of those workers are the ones we're talking about now. So of course, after all of these ups and downs, then your factory closes, your family split, and now you're in another union in another state, and now you're back, then they're trying to screw you out of wages. You're like, no, we're going to hold the line. I mean, I'm pissed, And this is the general sentiment I think in the broader economy that a lot of people aren't understanding right now, especially Democrats in Washington, D.C. They're just not understanding the level of angst and anxiety that the average worker is under. And you can't just tell people the economy's doing well. The statistics don't matter. The statistics don't matter. And you can't like talk somebody into feeling better because the statistics say a certain thing. Many of these statistics are outdated. They don't adequately measure how people feel about their status in life and the anxiety of over 40 years. Like if you grew up I use Youngstown, I use the Mahoning Valley because that's where I'm from. But there are so many areas across. These are my peeps. But there are so many people across the country that are in the communities they grew up in that are very similar. Like if I go to New Hampshire, I remember I went to law school up there. They lost, the textile mills, and in Boston and that. You go down the Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic, same kind of thing. It was textiles. They lost, steel. In our area, auto in so many areas, up and down the Ohio River. Like the anxiety is so deep. It's in the DNA of the people of like, even if I have a good job right now, I'm looking over my shoulder because something bad's going to happen. You know why? Because a lot of bad things have happened over the course of my life, And so
it is a lot of trauma. It is a lot of trauma. And there is, the polling that comes out, right, that just says that everybody thinks the economy is doing terrible. Yeah. All of these people, and I mean, even look, and I think there's a lot of subversive things that are happening. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but in the last 2 weeks, my Instagram and my TikTok has been full of videos saying, no, now is the time to buy a house. Now is the time to buy, or else when they drop the interest rates, but all of my friends, teachers, plumbers, even tech workers, everybody's just like, absolutely not. No way. Like, I don't trust any of this. I mean, in the feeling, it's so pervasive. I mean, which is, cost of living has gone up around 25% these last 2 years. I mean, you can't get out of the grocery store. You can't get out of there without spending $100, and, I just think that what do you like? What is your perspective, and what are you seeing? The fact that there is such a disconnect from the kind of the talking heads and the kind of high level Democratic Party, and just like not talking to like the building trades folks, right? Who like they have a good job and like IRA money is going to come down the pipeline, but they're not out there booking their trip to Mexico. They're feeling very uneasy.
Yeah, I think most people feel uneasy about it. And again, like it's not about the stats. It's not about like campaigning on, let's keep it going, because for a lot of people, it's just you're not meeting them where they are. The Art of War has a great, kind of universal strategy. You have to say you meet people in the orthodox, you lead them to the extraordinary. You got to meet people where they are. And if you acknowledge that how difficult it is first, and then say, and we've done these things and we want to move on. I mean, it's actually, the building and construction trades are actually probably the only group of working class people in the country right now that have some level of security and vision for the future. They're in a union, big infrastructure bill, a lot of investment, a lot of people putting money back in the United States. Can't find enough of these workers. But that's just a small part of the overall economy or workforce. So, that's a small percent. I know those people are doing okay. They're building data centers. They're, like I said, the infrastructure bill, the roads, the bridges, these investments on reshoring, the electric vehicle factories, the battery factories. I mean, and I know in Ohio we don't have enough building and construction trade union workers for what's to come. High class problem. But again, that's a small part of the economy. Everyone else is feeling very, very insecure about where they are. And then they go tell them, like, you should get locked into a 6.5% or 7% mortgage right now. Like, great idea. Great idea.
Or just telling them that like everything's fine, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's just let's just don't tell me that everything's fine when I don't feel fine.
Yeah, yeah, it's maddening, and it's been something I've talked about a good part of my career, but the pretty much the last 5 or 10 years in Congress, I was constantly in a battle with, please start reconnecting to average workers. And, people try to say, well, Tim's talking about, white working class worker. I'm like, it's white, it's black, it's brown, it's gay, it's straight, it's men, it's women, it's in the North, it's in the South. Like, it's workers across the board. And that's why you've seen the numbers, go down with, say, black men. See the numbers go down with Latino voters for Democrats. Like, why is that happening? It's happening because you show up with Latino workers and all you want to talk about is immigration. I support immigration reform. It's a very important thing we need to do, but you have to also talk about jobs in the economy and wages and pensions and small businesses and the kind of things that immigrant families or new families to the United States actually care about, maybe even more than immigration reform, because they have a mortgage that's due, or they're trying to like pay their bills like now, not next week, month, a year, like now. And so you just, over time, this has become this huge disconnect with working people. And that's why I think these strikes are important, in the sense that, every Democrat across the country, I wish every Republican too across the country, would go visit these workers on the picket line. Go hear some of these stories. Don't just push them off like, oh, they're just some workers, or, oh, we're going to fall in line with the businesses. It's like, we all know we need business and investment and all this. It's where's the balance? And I think that the party has gotten away from that. And I will tell you, like, when the party was lock solid into the economic, messaging, we controlled Congress for like 40 years, from the New Deal until Newt Gingrich in 1992 or 94, because we were seen as the economic party for working class people. And now we're the exact opposite of that.
Lost our way a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Where do you think fiscal policy should lie?
Yeah, I mean, it's always this delicate balance between the monetary policy, fiscal policy, what the Fed is doing, what the Congress and the political folks are doing as far as spending money. And I think because the political system was broke, when we needed, public investment from, as we were going through some of these tough times, whether it was the housing crisis and back in 2009, 10, as soon as President Obama got in, there was need for public investment in order to try to deal with what was going on. Couldn't get it. I mean, Obama had a stimulus bill, an infrastructure bill, all of this stuff to try to inject some money in the economy. But after we lost the House in 2010, there was no way we were going to get any of that passed. And so we were locked in. So then all of the responsibility for trying to balance out the economy went to the Federal Reserve, and that's when you saw quantitative easing. You saw all this easy money, which, kind of kept things from falling apart. But now debt is super, super high. And, we're still in the United States running, I think, almost $1 trillion a year deficits.
Yeah. Talk about a bar tab.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And now the interest rates are going up. And as the interest rates go up, what the taxpayer has to pay on debt goes up. And so that money has to come from somewhere. So it comes out of your budget to pay interest on the debt. And that's another, backdoor way of like squeezing the investment programs that we need to make in the United States. The war in Ukraine, keeping up with the technologies, making the investments, workforce development, healthcare, all of this. But I just want to say this too, like, we have to make investments as a country, right? But the lack of creativity, the lack of innovation in our public sphere now, like, we are spending tons of money on programs and we're not moving the needle on poverty. Homelessness is going up. Childhood poverty is going up. We're not, our education level, our skills level is not going up at the rate we need it to go up. And so, like, what were healthcare costs? Same thing. Like, we spend 2.5 times as much as every other industrialized country on healthcare and get worse results. So what the Democrat and the Republican parties need, there's no fucking ideas now. Like, where are the new ideas to, like, actually solve these problems? I think that's the big disconnect in the country right now, is that people want solutions. I mean, I've had a chance to meet a lot of really, really rich people, and I don't care how much money you make. You don't want to pay taxes and it's going into a black hole. You want to pay taxes if many people are even okay with paying taxes, but they want it to work. Like, they don't want to just waste money. And then if you're an average working class person and you're paying all these taxes and you're not getting the services that you want, we're blowing all this money in our healthcare system, but not everybody has, we can't cover everybody with the proper mental health coverage, which then leads to homelessness, which then leads to these tent cities and puts the strain on all these local communities. So, like, because the system is broken. Same thing with, putting people in prison and spending $60,000 a year on them for marijuana crimes. Like, that's insanity. Like, that's crazy. You should, like, just make it legal, expunge the records, get people out of prison, and take all that money and make sure we're covering people with mental health coverage or addiction coverage. And so the taxpayer, I talk about this all the time, not to get on a complete rant here, but if you think about the taxpayer, right, half the country now has diabetes or pre-diabetes. Any health problem you have, if you have that problem and diabetes, it skyrockets the cost of taking care of that person. You spend like another day and a half in the hospital. It complicates everything else you have going on, whether it's heart disease or high blood pressure or this or that. Right now, half the country has diabetes or pre-diabetes. And that, those healthcare costs primarily go into the Medicare program for seniors, but also the Medicaid program that's there for the poor. So I want you to just listen to this. So the taxpayer subsidizes school lunches and school breakfasts. I've been to schools where they're giving kids a Rice Krispie treat and chocolate milk. They're at like 80 grams of sugar before they even take a step in the school, right? And so they're not, kids aren't supposed to have nearly that much sugar. Nobody really should have. So that's all publicly paid for, right? That's all subsidized food for our kids. In many of these school districts, those kids are on the Medicaid program in so many schools because of the level of poverty in the country. So after eating that junk at high levels, living in a community with food deserts and eating out of the corner store, having completely a terrible diet for the course of your life on the Medicaid program, now you have diabetes when you're 20 or 25 years old. So we subsidize the bad food, we feed it to our kids, and then we subsidize the health care, which is going to be significantly more expensive because of the food we've been giving them and the kind of environment we've set up. And then you wonder why the taxpayer wants to like shoot themselves. They're like, you guys don't know what you're doing. Like, so what, like and we're going to talk about this at We the People, with some of the initiatives that we start promoting, like food as medicine, making sure we get grocery stores and healthy foods and urban gardens into these food deserts so kids can actually have some healthy food so that they don't get diabetes. And if you just put a little bit of money up front in a creative way, you're going to save a lot of money on the back end on your healthcare costs, and that frees up money to do all kinds of other things, whether it's infrastructure, skills training, securing retirement retirements, all of these investments. But the whole system is backwards now, and we're literally subsidizing the food that makes our kids sick, and then subsidizing the health care to then take care of them at an extremely expensive level. Broken. Completely and utterly broken.
And also to add to that, if you're 20, or 30 and you don't have diabetes, then you're probably living a better, more high quality life, So
productivity's up.
Yeah.
I mean, it just diminishes your cognitive functions. I mean, it's
the
bad
point
all
of
the way
life
around.
to live, right? And so it all starts with no Rice Krispie treats, which is
sad to say.
Well, pretty simple. Honestly, there are better things to eat out there, I think. But
yeah,
let's talk about some new. I just want to say you sent me this article and it went over my head. But medicine, AI, you're obviously much more of an innovative thinker than I am. So can you give me a little bit of rundown about this next revolution?
Yeah, I don't completely understand it either. I mean, but the fact that it was more of a mindset. I think when I sent it to you, I was like, I think we have to look at AI and the benefits of it. Like, what can we use this for to help us stay healthy? How can doctors use this? How can we better understand our own personal health and making certain decisions? And so I don't completely understand how it's going to all fit into these different areas, but I'm not sure we should be running around with our hair on fire, saying all the negatives, and there will certainly be negatives, but what are the positives? And how do we make sure that AI is being utilized appropriately, properly, ethically? But let's not just be scared of it. Just be scared of it because it's something new. I mean, there's always jobs that will be lost. Where's the potential for job growth? Yeah. Because you're going to see a lot of increased productivity. And again, here's where I think public policy may come in, and I don't have an answer, but I do know that what we saw with technology over the years is that technology will displace people. It will also significantly increase productivity. But what's happened is when we've seen increased productivity, we don't see that being shared with the workers. And that's been the problem. Before and, post-World War II until, the early 1980s, maybe late 70s, you would see significant increase in productivity and you would see a significant increase in wages for the workers. And then the past 30 or 40 years, it's been huge increases in productivity. Nothing goes to the workers.
Yeah.
And so that's the broken part of the system. And again, going back to our original conversation in this podcast, is that's where the economic anxiety comes from. There's no sharing of the wealth. And so we have to approach AI with, okay, what are the benefits, but also how are we going to figure out from a policy perspective how we're going to share the wealth with the workers who are helping generate the productivity increases.
I like it.
Yeah, it's more of a mindset thing.
Yeah. And I know I'm really interested. Microsoft just released their, what they're calling CoPilot, which is their kind of AI assistant. And then, of course, all the articles were just about how you can just say, hey, CoPilot, can you buy me a airline ticket for this date? And then supposedly it does it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So like a former congressman who doesn't have staff anymore could
I'm pretty sure that I buy some of your tickets. So I'm your own personal AI.
I love it. I love it. It's a beautiful thing.
All right. I want to end with something that I don't know if you've seen cruising around the internet. But it is about asking people, men in particular, how many times a day or a week they think about the Roman Empire.
seen this.
So I would just like to ask you, how many times do you think about the Roman Empire?
Well, maybe not the Roman Empire specifically, but I have been like super immersed in the Stoicism for the last like couple of years, and so I frequently am reading Marcus Aurelius quotes and thoughts from my buddy Ryan Holiday, who's pretty much single-handedly resuscitated Stoicism in the United States. So I get all the Twitter feeds and that. So I probably think about it more than most, and.
What's his Twitter handle?
There's I think it's at Ryan Holiday. There's at Daily Stoic is a great one, and then he most recently got a book out called The Daily Dad, and it's like Stoic wisdom for dads and helping along with parenting, which is a very difficult enterprise. But yeah, like the one I just read, that's just deep wisdom. So if you're going to go into the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius is a pretty cool way to like be a part of it. But
do you have a quote or anything?
It was be tolerant of others and strict with yourself. A lot of people want to be strict with others and like they can do no wrong. And Marcus Aurelius, I believe it was his quote, that was the complete opposite. Be kind-hearted, be tolerant of others' flaws, and strict on your own behavior. So it's a good spot. Be a good lesson for all Americans right now.
That does sound good.
That's good.
Well, that's a good way to end it. Thank you, Tim. Talk to you next time.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Thanks for listening to The Exhausted Majority, produced by We the People, with your host Tim Ryan and myself, Parker Butterworth. We really hope you enjoyed our conversation. Please subscribe, share, comment, and follow for more episodes of The Exhausted Majority. You can also head over to www.wethepeople250.us to sign up for our email list. Until next time.